Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world in 30 answers. Discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I am in the town of Forestville, this little one-street town in the heart of the Russian River Valley in Sonoma, and I am with Adrian Manspeaker of Jewell Wines, owner and winemaker. Adrian, welcome to Wine Soundtrack, and tell us a little bit about Jewell.
Thanks for having me on the podcast. So Jewell is a small winery here in Sonoma County. We focus on a few grape varietals: Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Zinfandel, and Vermentino. And we produce roughly about 3,000 cases of wine each year, spread out over about 20 different bottlings. So everything we do is very small lot, small production, and single vineyard driven wines for the most part. And we have a small tasting room in the town of Forestville, and we make our wine in Healdsburg.
And so you're working with these 4 grapes, and throughout Sonoma, do you own any vineyards, and where are you sourcing fruit from? Kind of give us a lay of the land.
Yeah, we do not own any vineyards, and we have farming contracts with, I can't remember exactly today how many vineyards. I think it's in between 12 and 14. We actually have some vineyards up the coast, up in Humboldt County, which is 2 counties north of Sonoma. So we have 5 vineyards up there that we work with. And in Sonoma County, I believe it is about 9 different vineyards that we work with here. All farming contracts. And for the most part, the relationships have been long-standing relationships. So some of the vineyards we're working with, our vineyards that we started with back in 2007.
And you said that you are, you have your tasting room here in the town, but where else are your wines available? Are they only available here, or are they in markets elsewhere?
Yeah, we are currently distributed in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and just opened up the Nevada market and California for the most part at the moment.
Great. So I know that we've talked before, and you're originally from Humboldt County area. Growing up in that area, I mean, obviously there were vineyards and such, but what is your first memory relevant to wine?
Well, there really aren't vineyards in Humboldt County. I mean, there's 150 acres.
That's true.
But it is hopefully an up-and-coming wine region. My first memory of wine as a kid, well, it's not probably not a real good one, but my parents weren't real big wine drinkers, and I remember there was, as a kid, there was a bottle of wine. My parents left the wine in this cupboard that was the Lazy Susan, where sugar and other things were kept, and I remember going in there and smelling it. And I think it had turned to vinegar at that point. So I remember wine that my parents drank as not being very good. But that doesn't say that they don't have palates now. But at that point in time in their life, the wines that I remember as a kid didn't bring home anything true to me that I've carried over into my profession here as a winemaker.
Well, I mean, you learn something when you learn that wine can turn to vinegar. But on a better note, is there one of those memorable wines you had, one of those aha moments or memorable wines? What was it? Because you're shaking your head like you know already. So what wine was it?
Well, I mean, I moved to Sonoma County in 2003, and I followed my girlfriend at the time, now wife, Lily, down here. She was going to college, and we did a lot of tastings and went out to different wineries and did wine tasting. But what really, there was a wine, the aha moment wine. I was having dinner with her on my 25th birthday at John Ash. I remember looking at the menu and kind of went to the reserve list, and there was a bottle, a 1978. It was Iron Horse Vineyard, and they used to produce a cab from Alexander Valley from T&T Bar Ranch, I believe it was called. Actually, I had a friend who lived close by, so I was familiar, out in Alexander Valley, so I was familiar with the vineyard. And so I was and it was $125. So, excuse me, didn't seem like that expensive of a wine for a 25-year-old bottle. So we bought it. And then I remember the bottle came out and we looked at it, and the back label said these grapes were harvested in the third week of October in 1978. And I'm like, I was born in 1978 in the third week of October. And so that was like, I would say the aha moment wasn't necessarily about, the wine was good, but I don't remember that, the wine as much as I remember the story. And so, the story about these grapes being harvested around my birth date, the day I was born, and they've made this journey in a bottle 25 years later, and there's a great story to tell, and I'm sure the winemaker has a story to tell about the wine and the process, and that's kind of when I had this, wine is a little bit different than, other alcoholic beverages that are just meant to be consumed. These are kind of meant to create memories that you'll remember, right? So
absolutely. So
that was, for me, an aha moment.
And so as you have evolved, and obviously you focus on Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and Vermentino and Zinfandel, you focus on that, but if we come to your home, what sort of wines do we find in there? Is that really your focus? Is it a lot of domestic wines? Is it your own wines? Or what would we find?
Yeah, I have a good friend in Pennsylvania who sends me, he's a distributor, so he'll send me a care package, he calls it, and it's a box of export wine, or wines that he imports. I don't have a lot of imported wine. I have a lot of domestic wine and a lot of Pinot Noir, for sure. It's like 90% Pinot Noir. My wife, when she's drinking, she's not right now, but when she is, she likes like white wines, high acid white wines and Pinot. But we tend to not go above. It's hard to find a good occasion to open a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon or even a Zinfandel. So for the most part, we drink kind of those lighter, more European style, higher acid wines at our house. Yeah. And
is there something you opened recently that drank really well?
Let me think. It's funny. I tend to not remember the really good ones. I do, but I do remember some ones that were unfortunate, for sure.
Those always tend to leave a lasting memory.
I opened 3 bottles that I'd been saving, and all 3 of them were corked.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Oh. I was like, I'll go to the next one, corked. What have I had recently? Let's see. I can't remember anything off the top of my head. I haven't drank in the last 3 months, so that might be the problem. But around the holidays, I definitely open up. I opened up a Joseph Drouin, I believe it was like an 07 Grand Cru white Burgundy, and it was drinking great. Yeah.
So do you think that there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
No. Pinot Noir is as close as you can get, but within that you have so many genetic mutations that one individual clone, the genetic mutations have created all these different clonal selections, and I don't work with one specific one. But yeah, I think really the variety can't be perfect because it really is site specific. So you can't just go and plant one grape varietal across the world and be like, it's the perfect varietal. It really has to do with the weather and the soil and the climate. So maybe there's probably the perfect variety for a specific vineyard, yes, or a specific site, but maybe not in general. Yeah.
Okay, so you were quick to answer that, so I have another one. Let's see how quick you are. What's your opinion on wine critics and scores?
Oh, man, that's funny. Love-hate, I guess. I can't figure that one out, to be honest. I have made several wines in my life that I'm like, this is the best wine I made, and nobody else thought that. And then I've made wines where I lose sleep at night and was like, why did I do that? And it's the best rated score, best rated wine that we've ever made to this day. So, from a consumer standpoint, I think they're very important to help people make decisions. And I hear it, fairly often from some of our members here that they read specific, if you're, and this is, if you're getting into wine, it's a good thing to do, but follow the critics, right? And try some of the wines that they highly rate. And if you like those, keep following them. If you don't, maybe they're not, judging wines the way that the way your palate fits. Right. And so shifting around and finding the critic that you align with, I think is very important. So we submit some of our wines, but A lot of times it's just because I have way too much stuff on my plate and I forget to actually submit by the deadlines. And then the wine's sold out, so what's the point in getting the score, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, we love scores when we get them, but we don't. It's not like it's for a brand. It could be a live and die thing. So one year you get 96 points, your wine sells out. The next year, same wine, it gets 92 points, and nobody buys it.
Yeah.
So we try not to hang our hat on scores.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now you said your wife really likes white wines and goes for high acid wines. I'm curious, for you as a wine drinker, red, white, or rosé?
What are we doing? Today it's raining. We've had about an inch of rain in Sonoma County. It's Pinot. Springtime, as it warms up, after a long hard day of work, it's a glass of rosé.
So you're an equal opportunist.
Yeah. I know the question is, what's your favorite wine? It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, what's the occasion? What's the mood? How's the weather? It's hard for me to answer that question.
Well, speaking of occasions, weather being something that sets a mood of what wine you want to drink, but so does food. So how do you approach food and wine pairing? Do you follow rules? Do you have tips? Do you look for certain things, or you just don't care?
Well, I think because I make Pinot Noir, I don't care. Because it typically works well with everything. I mean, to be completely honest, my wife is the chef in the house, and she does all the cooking. And I usually open a bottle, but I'm not like, we'll sometimes have to think about it. But because of what we like to drink, it's not always like has to be perfect pairing, right? White wines and, I feel like wine goes with, I feel like you don't have to follow the rules. But if you're, in those situations when you're doing like a winemaker dinner, I do take that approach differently and really try to work on those pairings with the chef and make sure that the wine and food do complement each other. But at home, I'm not as particular. Yeah.
So it can be meat, it can be fish, it can be vegetables, it can be pasta, and Pinot Noir is open.
Yes. Yeah. Or a rosé or a Vermentino. Or some other interesting white wine that we have, or Chardonnay. We probably drink less Chardonnay than other whites, but sparkling. It could be anything.
So, for somebody who hasn't had the pleasure of tasting Joseph Jewell wines yet, what do you think they're missing out on?
Ooh, that's a good question. Our wines they fit in this mindset. I've had people tell me this before, that you're not typical Russian River Valley. Half of the Pinots we produce are Russian River Valley. The other half are from Humboldt. And Humboldt is distinctly different in terms of a growing region. Those are very unique. So I think if you're looking to try something new, our Pinots from Humboldt are kind of produce a flavor profile that you're like, it's not Oregon, it's not Russian River, it might be somewhere in between. Has a little bit of that fruit structure that you get from Russian River, but not over the top. And has a little bit more of that thicker skin grape that produces a little more tannin from Humboldt. So, but as a brand too, as our style is there's two extremes in terms of Pinot producers. You have the producers that go for really big, ripe, jammy fruit bombs, high alcohol, and then you have ones that go for that really lean, kind of elegant, pretty style. And I always say we're kind of in the middle. And the vintage will kind of dictate which way we lean. If we go into, if it's a warmer year, they end up feeling a little riper. If it's a cooler year, they tend to be more acid driven. So we make 15 different Pinots a year. And so, I think it's worth giving us a shot because you're going to find something you like, I feel like.
And so if Space Aliens were to knock on the door right now and come in, which of your 15 Pinots, or perhaps other wines, which one would you pick to introduce them to Joseph Jewell wines?
Wait, who's coming in? Sorry.
Space Aliens.
Space Aliens. I was like,
they know nothing about wine.
I've heard, given all the single vineyards we make, I would be like, you have to try the Hallberg. That's delicious. What I've heard from people with really good palates is they really like our appellation Pinots because we work with Hallberg, Bucher, Starscape. These are all single vineyard wines that we create, and then we take barrels from just those vineyards and we create our appellation wine, which has all the layers and complexity of Russian River. We look at it as our appellation wine, but sometimes people think it's our best wine.
So you'd give them the Hallberg or the appellation?
I mean, if it's one wine,
I
would say the appellation wines, yeah. Okay. And they're like our most reasonably priced wines. Because they're space aliens, they don't know anything. But if you really want to get into Pinot Noir and you're a Pinot producer, then I would dive deeper into the single vineyards and those site-specific wines because they're interesting and they're all different.
Well, so you're talking about sites specific wines and that they, let's just take Pinot Noir. It's different in every vineyard it comes from, whether it's in Humboldt or Russian River or from one vineyard to another. So how much does vintage vary? I know vintage plays a part in that, and every vintage is different, but how much variation do you see from year to year? Do you see more commonality or, big differences, big jumps?
We really see it coming through in the wines with our style, and that's because we're making really small amounts of wine from each vineyard. We're not moving around within the vineyard. So like Hallberg, for instance, I've been making wine from C-Top, which is one of the blocks, and I-Block. So we have two different blocks that we've been making wine from for 10 years. I think there's always a commonality of Hallberg that comes through, like this is Hallberg, but the vintage always comes through too. And so there's definitely some variation year after year, and good and bad, usually good. Usually kind of adds to that intrigue of the type of wines we make. I know the bigger producers, on the larger scale that are producing wines that go into grocery stores and stuff like that, they don't want that variation. They want that wine they want somebody who's going to go and grab that wine off the shelf who had it last night, not even know there was a vintage change, right? And so we find that our members here, that's something interesting they look forward to. Like, I want to try the new Hallberg. What's different about Hallberg from last year, So for the most part, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you spend a lot of time in each of these vineyards?
I don't have enough time to go around to spend a lot of time in all of them, no. I am out there at least 4 times a year in each vineyard. Sampling. Once it comes close to harvest, could be like 3 times a week, but we kind of just check in, at certain times of the year with the grape grower. And some of them, like Hallberg and Booker on West Side Road and Bootleggers Hill. There's some vineyards where like the farmers behind it are so dialed in that I don't really need to like ride them and be like, hey, when are you going to do this? So because we don't own any vineyards, we're also not vineyard managers. I do lease one and farm one vineyard. So there's one spot. I haven't been willing to take that risk yet, but we have on a small scale.
Yeah. So for the one that you're leasing and farming every day, and obviously you're visiting the other vineyards, now that you're leasing one, do you feel the need to kind of talk to your vines? Do you go in there and talk to them and communicate what you need or listen to them? Do they talk to you?
Little bit. I mean, I feel like that's out of my control. They're not going to listen to me. We try to talk to them through our actions, I guess, and do timely pruning timely and try to do our work in the vineyard in a timely manner when it's required. But God, Mother Nature throws you so many curveballs. Right now, the vineyards in Humboldt, up until about a week ago, were still in snow.
Wow.
So I haven't even been able to get up there and prune yet, and here we are, April's coming up. So that's interesting. But no, I mean, I'm mowing and spraying sulfur up in that vineyard and very active up there. I go up there about 12 times a year. Uh-huh. It's a 2.5-hour drive from here. So that I could have decided to farm a vineyard a little bit closer to where I live, but I've got great farmers here, and the attention is more needed up there because there isn't as much of a wine industry up there. So, it's been a learning experience for sure.
Have you established any sort of good luck rituals that you like to do at harvest that kind of set the mood for what you're about to go into? Especially when you're sourcing from so many different vineyards, you've got things coming in right and left. I mean, it must be a crazy time during harvest.
It was very crazy. In my youth, I played baseball and I was a pitcher, and I had lots of rituals like pregame, walking onto the field, don't step on the line, like all these little silly things. But in the wine, no, I don't have anything in the very cliche, but like the first fruit that comes in, we pop a bottle of sparkling. And then it's like just chaos. Well, we call it controlled chaos. And I don't have any rituals that like set the mood for harvest.
Yeah.
You always go into it with the best intentions, but there's been some really good ones. 2020 comes to mind as the most challenging harvest, like, of all time.
Because of the fires?
Yeah. And the virus, right?
Yeah.
So you had all these things, and the vineyard, some of the vineyards were in mandatory evacuation zones. The winery was in a mandatory evacuation zone. So just getting to the winery itself, you had to go through like 3 checkpoints where there was a cop sitting there asking you questions. And, eventually I would just have to say, hey, look, I have to go get picking bins. There's a vineyard. There's a fire beating down on it. And if I'm unable to get my picking bins out in the vineyard, the farmer's going to lose his crop and he's going to lose his money. So you need to let me through. And they would say, anyway. So there was different challenges. Yeah. And then you had, on top of that, you had the virus. And then on top of that, you had quality control with the fires and trying to manage all those things.
Oh.
It was crazy. 2020 was. We're glad that's in the record. But it was followed up by 2021, which in my 15 years of making wine was by far the best vintage I've ever made wine in.
Wow.
Yeah. So we got a reward about a year later.
Well, so you're talking about like extreme situation when you have the fires. It's more of a norm than it should be here, but it's not, it's hopefully not a norm in this area, we hope. But are there any signs or predictors that you look for that are going to tell you what a harvest is going to bring? Or is that absolutely impossible?
I mean, if you're constantly in the vineyard, you can see these little, you can see how the vines are growing, how healthy do the vines look, how vigorous. If you're really on top of it, you can do cluster weights and kind of have an idea how much, what your crop size is going to be ahead of time. I would say it'll be kind of this year with the amount of rain we're having backed up, with the previous vintage being like on the tail end of a severe drought. And this year, the vintage variation from 22 to 23 is going to be significant. And so then that requires a winemaker to really, spend more time in the vineyard and make sure that they can adjust it so it's not like completely out of whack.
Right. So it's not so much that you're seeing predictors, but more looking for signs of how you have to react to it.
Right. Yeah. 17 was a good, fairly similar. We haven't started the growing season yet, so I can't tell you anything about what's going to come. But in 2017, we got a ton of rain, and it was kind of late spring rain. And the vines that year just looked so vibrant. I remember going, okay, finally, we're out of the drought, right? I think it was like 2012 through 16 were pretty much drought years. And then 17, we were out of the drought for like 2 years, 17, 18, I think. And I remember the way the vines grew looked way different than the previous year. And then in the end, the fruit, the wine, the berries were a little bigger, a little plumper because there was more ground moisture. So I think wineries in general prefer to manage the amount of water that the vines get. So when you have an abundance of water and maybe a late spring rain event that lingers, maybe the berry stretched out a little bit. And anyway, the 17 wines I loved because they were elegant and pretty.
Well, be careful what you wish for, right? We're in a drought all the time wishing for rain, then we get rain and we're like, oh no, my berries are too big.
I know. Yeah, so that's something to keep an eye on. And yeah, there's been other vintages where you thought you had a great idea what was happening, and then the growing season, I think a winemaker is going to tell you how good the wine's going to be before harvest doesn't know what they're talking. I mean, we are all really waiting months after harvest. We can say it was a great growing season and everything lined up, but really that whole chemistry makeup of what's going on within the fruit and after it gets fermented, how does that, is that an ageable vintage or is it a drink now vintage? Those things are hard to say until after you taste the wine, in my experience. So
you've been making wine for how many years?
15, 16? Yeah. And like garage winemaker for the first year, and then like an apprentice for, probably 2 or 3 years.
And before you got into wine, or when you were a little kid or a little boy, what did you want to be when you grew up? Is winemaking something you knew you wanted to do?
No, definitely did not want to be a winemaker. Didn't even probably know about the profession until I moved to Sonoma County. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. That was like my dream as a kid, or play football or sports. I was really into sports.
Who's your team?
I'm a Giants fan.
Okay.
Yeah. And, obviously that didn't happen. And, I got into construction, and then, and that was good. I learned a lot of stuff doing, building houses and developing property. I thought that was a potential career path for me. And I got into the wine industry. It's like you get bit by the bug, like, I don't know how to describe it. I feel like being in the wine industry it's been extremely fun for me. I don't feel like I'm going to work when like they say what's the saying? If you like what you do, they say you never work a day in your life. Right. So, it wasn't an easy road to becoming a winemaker, but it's been the school of hard knocks, like learning on the job training. I didn't go to Davis for the degree, but I went there for extension courses, and so I kind of patchworked my education to come to where I have a good understanding of how to make wine, but not a chemistry background. Right. So more of a practical background in winemaking, and I have I don't even have a mentor, who showed me, but I have some people that I like, hey, I have this chemistry, I have this issue with a wine, like, who do I call? I have a person that has mentored me in that. Well,
regard. You say you don't have a mentor, but I'm curious if there is someone, a teacher, a family member, or someone else in your life that ever gave you a piece of advice that you try to live by or work by, something that really is at the core of how you work or behave or how you do something.
Yeah, I mean, definitely had two great parents that raised me the right way, and taught me work ethic for sure as a kid. Like, I remember I wanted a BMX bike when I was a kid, and my parents didn't just go and buy it for me. They're like, my dad's like, well, we got to put a brand new floor in the house, so here's the tools, so I ended up putting this oak wood floor in our house, and I think he paid me $3 an hour, something like that, but it was a raise because my sister was only getting $1.50. And anyway, that's a bad subject, but it definitely pushed me to want to not, I didn't want anybody to give me anything. So that's kind of been my life in general, right? Is work for what you want. And there's definitely within the wine industry, there's been some resilience, that a lot of people, it's been hard. It was hard running a business the first 7 to 10 years, were really hard to establish a brand. And many times where I was like, I think I should just throw in the towel on this. And it wasn't that we couldn't make good wine. It was that it was hard to run the business with all the regulations, and even trying to figure out how to sell your product and market yourself. Those were the challenging parts. Those are always going to be the challenging parts. But I felt like making the wine in the beginning days was easier than selling the wine.
Oh, isn't that always the case?
Yeah. I mean, there was a couple, this guy, family friend, my best friend's dad, his name was Steve. He always said, in business, you have to say what you're going to do, and you got to do it. So there was, you can't tell somebody you're going to do something for them and not do it. So there's this trust that goes on if you're a business person, when you tell somebody you're going to do something. So from that, I feel like that's how, there's a lot of people in all sorts of industries that are really only out for themselves, but I'm very much more down to help people out. And our growers, the people who grow grapes for me, it's a community. So if they call me and they're like, I've got extra fruit, I need help selling, it's like, I can help you out, or vice versa. If, a grower calls and says, I don't have enough fruit, I'll be like, it's all right. I'll go with the flow with it, but it's a relationship that I nurture. And I think in everything, it's all relationship based. Yeah. In the wine industry.
So when you look back at your career, what would you say, or careers, what would you say is one of your proudest achievements to date? I mean, I think you've kind of spoken to that, right. Probably getting through the first 10 years of a business. But I mean, right. Is that something you'd say is one of your proudest achievements, or is there something else?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it just depends on the time frame of your life, right? Mm-hmm. in baseball, I had some moments, but those are long gone. Those are in the past. I don't know. I'm proud of like the community of people that support our brand, Joseph Jewell, and the friendships that has brought me. The different wine club members and all those people I've met throughout starting this business, and how much they get joy out of our wines.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing. Yeah, and it's great. It's great for my family. It supports our family.
Yeah.
So that's a huge plus. I didn't think that would ever happen.
That's an achievement.
Absolutely, that's an achievement. Yeah. No, but I mean, I think I probably can't emphasize, but it's like the relationships that I've formed with all these different vineyards, and also our members and our club members and the people who support our brand. Those are achievements,
Yeah.
and we have a pretty good relationship with just about all of them.
Great.
Yeah.
So when you're not working, how do you spend your free time? I mean, I know that you're not really working because you love what you do, but when you're not doing this, how do you spend your free time?
Oh. Yeah, I've got a beautiful wife, Lily. I have 3 daughters, Simone, Harlow, and Monroe. Those are their names, and they're 1, 5, and 8 right now. So 99.9% of my free time is with my family. My daughter, Harlow, I told her once, I was like, I have a friend in town. I'm going to go grab lunch with him. And she goes, Dad, you don't have any friends. And so I took a selfie with my buddy Ross, and I was like, no, I have friends here. So anyway, aside from that, I love golf.
Uh-huh.
When I go to Pennsylvania to do sales trips, I make sure that the reps put in my friend Kevin out there, like get some tee time set up. I used to do a lot of CrossFit to stay in shape. But I like going to the beach and going hiking with the kids and family and doing outdoor stuff with them.
Huh.
Yeah.
And on the rare occasion that you can set a romantic evening for you and your wife, you've told me what kind of wine she likes, but I'm curious what sort of wines you would open to set the romantic mood.
Well, we got to go to dinner twice this last. Well, one we went to Pigs and Pinot, and the other we went to Fern Bar in Sebastopol. But there's when we got engaged, we were in Bodega Bay, and we ate at used to be called the Duck Club, and we bought a bottle of like Mary Edwards Clop Ranch or something, and obviously it was an amazing day and an amazing night. But for some, we bought a couple cases of that, and I still have some. So if we wanted to bring back some old memories of that, it's kind of like one of those wines that we're like, oh yeah, let's drink that. So that would work, yeah. A Mary Edwards Pinot would work. Yeah.
So complete this sentence for me. A table without wine is like
a nightmare.
I've got another one. We're going to play just a few games here. We're sitting at a table, and we've got your wines on the table, and there's an empty seat next to you. Who, from any walk of life, living or deceased, would you love to be sitting in that seat sharing a bottle of Joseph Jewell wines with?
Ooh. Anybody, living or deceased. I would say maybe Tim Lincecum of the Giants. He was the one who brought the Giants the first World Series. Well, he was one of the best pitchers of his era.
Yeah?
He'd be a good person.
Yeah. And the next time your Giants win the World Series, which wine would you want to give to them to celebrate?
That's a good question.
And hopefully you can start preparing, right?
Right. Well, yeah, we had an idea of making a special blend for the Giants in 2010. Somebody else beat us to it. But yeah, I don't know. We have a new sparkling program that I haven't released any of the wines yet, but I would throw in our 2020 Brut Rosé. Yeah, it'd be a good one to celebrate with.
Well, you got a little time, right?
Yeah. I don't see them winning the World Series for a few years, but you never know.
But you'll stay loyal till the end. Okay, I got another question for you. You're seeing a lot. I mean, we know that fires and rains and all these things have happened, and climate change is here. You think we'll be making wine in a couple hundred years, drinking wine?
Given the current situation of global politics, yeah, don't give us long.
Oh, how sad.
100 years? I don't know. The world, the planet is resilient, so it'll outlive us for sure, I think. But that's a tough question. I mean, I think the answer is yes, but it'll look a lot different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if, unfortunately, the world was ending tomorrow and you were sent off to a deserted island where you'll survive, which 3 wines would you want to take with you?
Oh, wow. Like any vintage.
Anything.
I mean, there's wine. There's a ton of wines I haven't had, so I'd go with some sort of Latache. I like Literi wines, and I've had some old Gary Farrell Rocchioli bottlings that were delicious, and that was one of the wines I was referring to that I had 3 bottles and they were all corked. So maybe not the corked one, but it would be Pinot, and Pinot.
Pinot.
Yeah.
Because when you left Pinot.
And maybe Magnums if we can get if it's just 3 or maybe Jeroboams, maybe.
Yeah, so they last a long time.
Yeah.
Well, you've lasted a long time and done really well, and we're going to play our last little game of the day, which is pairing wine with music. Wine makes you feel a certain way, music does. You have a lot of different Pinot Noirs, and so, if we pick a couple of them, just tell me if there's a song, a musician, or a genre that conjures up. But before we get to your Pinot, I'm curious about your Vermentino Pet Nat.
If that brings up any particular music, it's like, it's a sparkling Vermentino, bottled off the primary tank and bottled with some residual sugar, and then it ferments in bottle, which traps the CO2. It's very bright, fresh, citrusy with some floral notes. I like reggae music, and I would kind of lean toward it's like a Bob Marley, No Woman No Cry song, maybe something like that. Okay. Yeah, it's got that type of vibe to it.
Cool. Okay, Pinot Noir. You mentioned the Appellation series that just embodies all these great vineyards. So,
I would probably gravitate towards the Eel River Valley. It's a bottling from Humboldt, so it's a blend of the 5 vineyards that we work with up there. And it's a little bit more, it has a little bit more structure to it, so it's not rugged, but it's kind of rugged country up there. It has some earthy notes, kind of a little funkier, maybe like a Jimi Hendrix song of some sort. Yeah.
And then compared to, let's say, the Hallberg Pinot Noir that you spoke about.
Yeah, Hallberg. Vineyard about 5 miles south of our tasting room, owned by Emeritus Winery, and 100% dry farm vineyard. That wine, music-wise, maybe like a Tom Petty. Tom Petty's a big hit in this tasting room.
And then last but not least, the Pinot Noir that you make off of the vineyard that you are farming.
Okay. So that's Elk Prairie Vineyard, which is in Humboldt County, up on Fruitland Ridge. And I'm trying to figure out, I spent a lot of time on a tractor up there. So it's in my mind, I'm listening to country music probably, because I feel like a farmer. So I don't know. I like Zach Brown. Yeah, some sort of Zach Brown, like fried chicken or something like that. Yeah.
You're good at this. If we had time, we'd go through all 12, single vineyard wines and really see how each vineyard conjures up a different song. But alas, we are almost out of time, and I have one more question for you. Okay. The final question, 2-part. First part is, what wine region in the world is the top of your bucket list to travel to?
All of them. Bucket list. I've been to Burgundy. I guess because I've got 3 kids that are so young, I haven't even put the list together yet because it's not in my future until they get a little bit older. I would love to go anywhere in Italy. Yeah, I wouldn't even be picky, but Tuscany sounds great. Yeah.
When they get a little older, you can take them
Yeah, maybe they can take me.
And the last part is if people want to come and visit you. I mean, you're in Sonoma. You are in a tiny little town, if you can call it a town, street. But how can they find you, your wines, and what can they experience?
Yeah, we're in the western part of Sonoma County, so Forestville. It's about 10 miles from Healdsburg, 10 miles from Santa Rosa. And we have a website, www.josephjewell.com, where you could book a tasting with us. We have a couple different experiences that we offer. We like getting people out in the vineyard, so we do a vineyard tour and picnic. Very educational on how, this is where wines are made. They're made in the vineyard, and how we like to bring people, and get them out of the town of Forestville and get them into the vineyard, and then execute our tastings in the tasting room. And we've got a great staff of wine educators that host tastings here. So, and pretty much, follow our website or give us a phone call, or actually we have a texting platform now. You can text us, 707-820-1621.
Well, someone's calling already, see? Well, Adrian, thank you so much for joining us today on Wine Soundtrack, and cheers.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. All right, cheers.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.